Hello, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Gear Up. Here's what's in store for you today. The ACC adds 2 more teams to its conference and is still looking for more. Floyd Mayweather Jr. remains undefeated with a knockout last night. Mariano Rivera ties Trevor Hoffman for the Major League lead in saves. 4 top 25 college football teams are upset by unranked teams this week. And I give you my top 5 sports movies of all time. I'm Michael Peters, and you're watching Gear Up. The ACC has agreed to add Syracuse and Pittsburgh to its conference. They are still considering adding 2 East Coast teams to the conference, and the candidates would be Connecticut and Rutgers. Floyd Mayweather Jr. remains undefeated as he knocked out Victor Ortiz last night in the 4th round. Ortiz appeared to headbutt Mayweather in frustration, and the referee called a break. Ortiz then hugged and kissed Mayweather, and he responded with a legal knockout punch. Mariano Rivera of the New York Yankees earned his 601st career save yesterday. He is tied for the Major League lead with Trevor Hoffman, and he will go for number 602 today in Toronto. The Detroit Tigers and the Philadelphia Phillies have both clinched their divisions, but some races are still tight, even with less than 2 weeks to go in the regular season. The Yankees are only 4.5 games ahead of the Red Sox in the AL East, as are the Rangers over the Angels in the AL West. The Rays are 3 games back of the Red Sox in the wild card since they defeated them yesterday. They finish a 4-game set in Boston this afternoon at 1:35. The San Francisco Giants are only 5 games back of the Diamondbacks in the NL West. They have a 7-game win streak, while the Diamondbacks have lost 3 straight. The Cardinals are also only 4.5 games back of the Atlanta Braves in the National League wild card. Here are some top 25 college football scores. Number 3, LSU defeated number 25 Mississippi State 19-6. Number 1, Oklahoma holds off number 5 Florida State 23-13. Number 8, Oklahoma State beats Tulsa 59-33 in a game that ended at 3:35 a.m. because of weather delays. And number 10, South Carolina barely escapes Navy, but hangs on to win 24-21. There are a few upsets this week as 4 top 25 teams lost to unranked teams. They were Michigan State losing to Notre Dame 31-13, Miami upsetting number 17 Ohio State 24-6, Clemson beating number 21 Auburn 38-24 to end the Tigers' 17-game win streak, and Illinois defeating number 22 Arizona State 17-14. My upset alert for this week is Clemson over number 5 Florida State. Clemson defeated Auburn and is playing at home, which is a big advantage for them. Florida State is 2-1, but beat 2 very bad teams and is 100th in the league in rushing. The winner of this game will come down to whether Florida State's defense can stop a Clemson offense that averages around 40 points a game, but I think Clemson will win the game. My game of the week in the NFL is the San Diego Chargers at the New England Patriots. I think the New England Patriots will win. They are 7-point favorites, but they will win by more than that. They're coming off a 38-24 win over the Dolphins on the road, while the Chargers barely edged the Vikings last week 24-17 at home. Now we'll move to some local high school football news. Allentown loses a heartbreaker to Pemberton yesterday in overtime, 20-14. Petty gets his first school win in history over Poly Prep of Brooklyn, New York. They barely beat them 28-27. And the Notre Dame Irish crush West Windsor Plainsboro North 48-6. Now for the second episode of Mike Speaks Out. Today you'll get my opinion on, would you purposefully lose the last 2 games of an NFL season so you could get the first pick in next year's draft? It depends. If there's a player you think you could build your franchise around, then I think you do lose the last few games. But if there isn't that one special player, then I think that you try your best in those games, and if you lose them, you lose them. You most likely will if you're contending for the worst record in the NFL. I know people say that you play to win the game and you're playing for pride and all that crap, but I think receiving the worst record in the league one year and a few years later being one of the elite teams in the NFL is a better choice than winning the last few games, still having a bad record, and not drafting a player that could be the next Tom Brady or Peyton Manning. Look at the Detroit Lions. They've been terrible for the past, I don't even know how many years. They drafted Matthew Stafford, and now they actually have a shot to make it to the playoffs. They're for real this year, I think. This day in sports history. In 1930, New York Yankees pitcher Red Ruffing hits 2 home runs to beat the St. Louis Browns 7-6. And in 1938, the Chicago Bears beat the Green Bay Packers 2-0. 2-0. One safety. I mean, I know they both have been legendary for having good defenses, but seriously? 2-0? Come on. Now, the weather's getting kind of cold out there. It would be a great time for some movies. Here are my top 5 sports movies of all time. At number 5, I have The Field of Dreams. At number 4, The Blind Side, the story of Michael Orr, who was drafted by the Baltimore Ravens. Number 3, Rocky. Number 2, Hoosiers. And number 1, a lot of movies could go here, but my number 1 sports movie of all time is Remember the Titans. Thank you for watching today's episode of Gear Up, and I'll see you next week.